Red! Tell all the other curs the law's coming! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. It's the middle of the week, folks. Good time to realize you're halfway there. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Assess how far you've made it into the things you wanted to accomplish this week. See if you're going to be able to get it all done by the time you hit the weekend. To get things started off today, let's first hit the usual with how to get in touch. The best way to reach out to me is through the website. You can find that over at therebelbroker.com. Click on the contact link in the menu bar, and from there you'll be able to send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. And while you're there, go ahead and head to the very top of the page. Big red button says take the survey to support the show, and click it. Give the same email address both times you're asked. Answer a few demographic style questions, because that's what it is. It's a demographic survey. And not only are you helping out the show, helping the show grow, and helping me put the thing on a pay-in basis, but you are also putting yourself in a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. I think we've given it out once each month for long enough that we've given out, I think, like $400 now is where we're at. So congratulations to the folks who've won that gift card so far, and good luck to those of you who have yet to register. Make sure to get that done. It's something we typically do in the first week or so of the month. So you'll be just in time for May. And good luck to those of you who step up and participate. Yesterday's show was well received. Whenever I lose my cookies, the show tends to be more well received than other shows. Yeah, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe being reminded of what has always frustrated me about this business every once in a while is good. I am now, in terms of real estate, I'm in a happy place. I don't have to deal with other real estate agents very much. And as I said, when I do, they're on the other side. They're the enemy. And I guess that warm, comfy blanket of being able to do my own thing also insulates me from having to come face to face with the regular, perpetual, just annoying crap that hovers around the business of real estate. And yesterday, I brought up how the one good thing about automation is it's the crappiest agents, the cookie cutter agents, that are going to get replaced by automation first. Or at least maybe I just really want it to be true, but it feels like that's it, right? If you're an agent who really doesn't bring much more to the table than getting the property on the MLS, and really all you're about is convincing people to list with you, I really want to hope that you get replaced by automation. And I could list off a million of you. There are 3 or 4 bouncing around in my head right now that I would love to see go the way of the dodo bird because of automation. Because you know what? You are no better than automation. You do not earn the money that you get when you do a transaction. Sorry. Anyway, so I got several folks who reached out to me because of yesterday's show. A couple of folks telling me I was on fire and spurring me on. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate the support. And of course, every once in a while, a fire like that does get lit under me, particularly when I'm faced with things that are particularly frustrating for their level of stupidity. And I guess the reason I've been able to have a kinder, gentler show for a long time is simply because I'm not faced with that stupidity on quite the regular basis. Anyway, so I was going back to the old automation discussion, and an article came out today Robotic automation impacting real estate industry, according to a consultant. Now, we all know how much I love consultants, but this was an interesting one, and I thought it was very interesting. And really the question is, I think what really needs, I guess, if we're going for the other side, right? So I'm arguing on a functional, thoughtful, value for dollar basis. Yes, the agents that tend to be the most successful today, that handle way more escrows than they could theoretically do and actually be doing their job, should be replaced by automation. The bad news is that the part of the business they're really good at, that upfront part, could still win out the day. Simply because they can say whatever they're going to say and still get people to jump on board with them. So they may be able to circumvent it. I would hope that folks would be savvy enough, but sadly, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are so intimidated by what happens with real estate. Such gigantic numbers are thrown around. So many forms for them to fill out are tossed their way. It's not that these people are stupid. And I would not categorize. I would categorize only one client I've had in decades as someone who I would categorize as needed to be protected from their own poor judgment. But I don't know if I would categorize them as stupid. And I think predominantly the reason why agents are able to get away with so much of what they're able to get away with is because of this monolithic pile of stuff that buyers have to wade through and that sellers have to wrestle with. And I can only, and one reason why I do this show is in hopes of reaching out to folks and helping them kind of take a deep breath and realize that while all that paperwork, all that info, all that stuff they have to submit is real and it has to get done, it doesn't need to be intimidating. And you need to be able to focus on picking agents that are actually going to do a job for you. And when someone tells you, hey, I should be the one you pick because I closed 250 escrows last year, you should be able to ask questions like, well, okay, so how much hands-on were you with each one of those 250 escrows last year? How is that physically possible? Right? I mean, come on. Does that mean you're handing me off to a lot of other people? Are all of these other people licensed? Will those folks be coming in behind you so I can interview them to figure out which one of them are morons and which ones aren't? Probably not. All right. Anyway. So automation. Let's see. Josh. I'm going to butcher this dude's name. Josh Herringcole, Principal and Global Real Estate Advisory Leader at EY. Don't really know what EY is. Joined REIT.com for a video interview at REITY's 2017. Now, I will include a link to this story and to the video in today's show notes. So if you want to go check this out for yourself, feel free to jump in and do that. Also, at the same time you're there, when you go look at the show notes, you'll be given an opportunity to join the Rebel Underground. There's going to be a button there. You can click it, join the Rebel Underground. You get access to exclusive information that's only available to members of the Rebel Underground. If you'd prefer to use your cell phone, just text the word Rebel Broker, the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. Follow the prompts afterward. It'll make it clear that you've connected to the right folks, provide the information asked for, and then you will be in the Rebel Underground. All right, so then to discuss technology trends that could impact real estate, we've talked about one-offs where we've sort of said this technology could hit real estate, this technology could hit real estate. We talked about how this is a big thing happening on the lending side in terms of really streamlining your lending process, and how it can also be a process you don't want to use if you have even a slightly off-center portfolio. If you're an investor, you can get the online thing going, but you're going to have to jump through some hoops on the front end just to be aware of that and be ready to do that and preemptively be ready to do that. Usually if you just give them a quick phone call ahead of time, establish a relationship with one individual and make sure they're adding all the notes they need to your information, like at Quicken Loans, that type of thing. You can navigate this and get a good experience. I'm following through on the Quicken Loans thing, the online Quicken Loans thing, because my situation's weird. I mean, I've got an investment property that is a vacation rental, and it hadn't reached its 2-year mark, which causes trouble because they don't want to count the income from that, but they want to count the cost, yada, yada, yada. So my experience is more complicated than what most folks is. So the feedback I'm going to be able to give you on that experience once it all comes to fruition, I think will be valuable for you. This Herrenkohl guy said that the opportunity to reduce lesser value activity greatly within companies. Now, this is aimed a little bit more at real estate folks. So it's talking about ways to liberate them from activities that are relatively rote. And absolutely, there are a select set of things that are rote in real estate. However, oftentimes it is not simply a question of doing a thing, but doing it well, meaning that you don't just get Form A, submit Form A, get people who need to look at Form A, have them sign it, and then send it back. Sometimes it's also about understanding the implications of that and taking extra steps that are going to back up Form A or enhance Form A or provide greater protections for your client, whoever that may be, buyer or seller, so that you are ending up at the end of the escrow with the strongest purchase possible. And by a strong purchase, I don't just mean you got the home at the price you wanted, at the terms that you wanted. I mean that once that thing is over, you're protected. If something bad happens, you have recourse. A good real estate agent does that. And there are too few of them, frankly. So this is aimed a little bit more at that. They commented on two dynamics impacting this. They're referring to it as digital disruption because that's a very sexy term. One is non-traditional companies entering the real estate industry, such as Airbnb. The other is the use of industry agnostic technology, such as analytics technologies, he said. And of course, what I find interesting about this article, because what's interesting is that the actual duties of real estate agents are one of those things that can be automated, no doubt about it. But what's interesting is they sort of gloss over that. They don't treat that as the main things. What they're talking about in a lot of this is how it affects your ability to analyze your leads, and it comes at it from this, again, the marketing bent of it. And I get that needs to be a part of the equation, but again, I dislike the fact that the real estate industry tends to take the focus away from providing top-notch service as a real estate professional, and instead chooses to focus on the marketing side of it, and as opposed to doing the actual job well. It focuses so much on convincing people to let you do the job with them, I guess. Okay. Let's see. The big news today, I think, is going to come down to housing starts, because I've got a unique position to take today. We talked about this a little bit the other day. We've got some more numbers that I wanted to cover with you. And I am actually going to be the guy who poo-poos the bad news today. And I feel pretty excited about that, because I'm usually the guy that takes the good news and turns it into bad news. So I think the numbers that we're looking at right now for housing aren't horrible. I think it still continues to be in line with the data that we have seen over the last few months that indicate a brighter picture. But we're going to break it down here and have a little bit of a chat and try to calibrate ourselves to what can we expect later this year in terms of housing, because the headlines today would tell us to be worried, and I don't think we really need to be. So, and this isn't me being... You guys have listened to me long enough. For those of you who haven't, if this is your first show, go back and listen to a few, and you'll learn very quickly I am not the happy news guru guy who just constantly spouts whatever encourages people to work with me as a buyer or a seller, or encourages them to get into the real estate market because that's good for the real estate market. I do my level best to be as straight and honest and forthcoming as possible, and I think that my years of doing this has kind of proven that out, particularly with a lot of the things I've been willing to say relating to how weak markets have been in the past when people were trying to talk about how strong they are. But in any event, we'll get into all that. We'll talk about it next. But for right now, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll right back to cover that information on what we can expect from housing coming up this year. So don't go away.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. As promised, we're going to be jumping into some headlines that have come out over the last day or so that talk about disappointing construction growth, which I don't think is really something we need to be worried about. Now, remember, these are month-to-month numbers. It's down from a year ago, so it's giving you it's being very honest in the way it's reporting the data in terms of just the straight numbers. But I think overall what we need to do is chalk this up to some pretty bad weather in the month of March. Simply because all the other indicators are actually pretty good. We're going to go ahead and talk about, two articles that came out. One from Housing Wire that kind of broke it down. Another one from our good friends over at Zero Hedge, who never saw a story that couldn't be turned into an apocalypse. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how they characterize things, and then move on from there to another article that I think, believe it or not, this one's from CNBC, and I think it lays it out fairly honestly. Now, so the first article from Housing Wire gives us the general layout. Housing starts showed lackluster growth in March, and we talked about that. The numbers were still okay, but just not good compared to last year or compared to expectations. Seasonally adjusted annual rate dropped 6.8 for housing starts. And remember, we're talking about just for the month. Disappointing economists and leaving the housing market lacking in new housing supply. Experts explained new construction activity hit its second lowest level over the past 6 months at a time when the market is in the most need of new housing. Okay, great. So it's interesting that they mentioned how it is over the last 6 months. Well, the last 6 months goes all the way back to when is prime building time, right? Back 6 months ago, weather was halfway decent. And so, of course, as the weather gets worse, the situation changes and building can't happen. And you can say, well, Robert, we're not even in the center of the winter. Yeah, that's true. But remember, it's a year-to-year thing. You're comparing this year to the same time last year. So even though things were down in December, they were down. They were actually better than they were the previous December. You were comparing a time of the year when winter normally does its thing. We're in March, where in previous years, we didn't seem to have quite as much stuff holding us back in terms of weather. Well, we've had a much stronger winter this year, and winter's extended a lot longer. It is raining, not at this very moment, but it was raining this morning right here in Morgan Hill. And, we're on April 19th. So what's going on with that? We normally don't see this much rain. We're getting a lot more rain. So weather, I think, is clearly playing a lot more. And we had a lot of this going on in March. So I think it's playing a much bigger part in this March than it has played in previous Marches. Now, I know this is going to shock a lot of you who've listened to this show for a while, but I am about to quote Lawrence Yun, the National Association of Realtors chief economist, a man who I have mocked on a regular basis for saying some of the goofiest crap ever. But I am about to agree with him. And I'm very glad he's saying what he's saying. So there you go. Quote, a major housing shortage exists in this country. Thanks for joining the bandwagon, Lawrence. It is therefore disappointing to witness in March the continued lackluster performance in new home building, which was the second lowest activity over the past 6 months. Home prices have risen 41% and rents have climbed 17% over the past 5 years at a time when the typical worker wage has grown only 11%. To relieve housing costs, there simply needs to be more homes built. Yay! If you've been listening just for a few weeks, you know this is the flag I have been waving. When will we start to get some bigger names in the real estate world yelling, build more homes, give us more homes? And finally, I'm glad to see folks like Lawrence Yun waving the let's build more homes flag rather than the let's make it easier to borrow money flag. Now, not too long ago, I was quoting Lawrence Yun in my more typical fashion where I make fun of him because that's what he was saying. He was talking about broadening the changes that were being made to credit ratings and how good this was and how it'll increase accessibility to funds at a time when that's not what you want to do, and B, should be very scary to people who have paid enough attention to realize what caused us trouble the last time around. Other economists said nothing about the decrease in home starts and focused only on housing completions. New home completions ticked upward 3.2% from 1,216 in February to 1,260 in March, as the unusually warm winter helped builders advance their completion schedules. Which is interesting. So I guess that would be in some parts of the country, because in other parts of the country, the opposite is true. Weather held back construction. Let's see. So in some of these areas, this is good news for buyers hoping to find a variety of homes to choose from in their price range. This trend will eventually affect starts and new home completions, though we will continue to see a shortage of homes in the market. Now, according to Trulia's chief economist, Ralph McLaughlin, March's housing starts numbers bring a mixed bag of news. Completions were up, which means home buyers can again look forward to much needed new supply. On the other hand, starts were down, which means medium run supply might dip in the second half of the year. One other person here, Mark Fleming from First American Finance, says, quote, millennial household formation is beginning to have meaningful impact on housing demand and will likely only increase. Currently, I estimate that the amount of housing supply necessary to keep pace with demand is probably about 1.5 million housing units a year. The fact that this month's housing completions were 1.2 million, an increase from just over 1 million a year ago, is good news, but still not enough. And then finally, a former chief economist from Fannie Mae, where's this dude's name? They don't give me his name. Oh, well, no, yeah. Permits, a leading indicator of future starts, rose by 3.6% and suggests that March's decline in starts will likely be short-lived. That's according to chief economist David Beerson from Nationwide. Permits are an especially useful indicator of future multifamily starts, as single-family permits are more contemporaneous with starts, and permits for 5+ unit buildings jumped by 18.3%. Okay, so that kind of lays it all out. I mean, we can also dip into the stuff that the folks at Zero Hedge want to say. But frankly, that gives a lot of the core data that I think we need. And let's blend that in with the data we've already been talking about. Permits continue to be up. Permits were still good news in March. Now, and that is one of the leading indicators of intent on the part of manufacturers. Now, there was also an article that came out within the last few days that talked about confidence among builders dipping a little bit. And I mentioned that, but it's still well within the positive range, right? It's still above that number that says we're going to build in terms of what home builders are going to do. So instead of taking this news, that's the headlines, and just reading that first paragraph of those stories, as you're heading off to work or you're browsing through your usual sites that you might get news from in the morning, and you're thinking, wow, well, maybe we're just not going to see those homes coming online this year. Don't. I honestly think we're going to see more homes come online this year. I think it's going to be regionally weird. One of the biggest areas that didn't see big increases were the West and the Midwest. So, and this is where we get some of the data from Zero Hedge, where they had the biggest driver was a 16% plunge in starts in the West and the Midwest, 35% plunge in Midwest single-family starts. Now, I honestly think they're just leaving that there to sort of sit and simmer and annoy you and make you feel sad. Whereas I think that the primary reason why we see this happening in the Midwest and the West is because of the weather. As a person in the West, we have had far more extreme weather. We have had the kind of weather that might delay construction starts and those types of things in the month of March. So I'm going to go ahead and hang my hat on that. I honestly think that we'll see. I don't think we're going to see enough in the West. There's still so much stupid stuff between builders and a completed job that I think a lot of that's difficult. And I think for a lot of manufacturers, a lot of homemakers, there is easier pickings elsewhere in the country. There are other places you can go that need homes where it's a lot easier to get a home built and it costs a lot less, and they're going to be able to get it done there. It's eventually going to have to come to a head here in California. something's going to have to give. There's finally talk. We talked several weeks ago about a local group in Santa Clara County that was specifically saying that we needed to cut back on some of these regulations and costs relating to building in California so that builders could get to work and start filling the demand. So there's enough surge, I guess you could say, in that mentality. And I'll be honest with you, when I first said and this was just a couple of months ago, when I first said I'd really love to see more mainstream folks talking about this need, it was kind of prophetic simply because within a week, I started to see more folks talking about it, and the level of influence of the folks I'm hearing say it is growing. I've always been surprised that we didn't hear more of this from the California Association of Realtors. California Association of Realtors might occasionally in passing mention it somewhere, but by and large, they were focused on the money side of it. They wanted folks to lend more. And I suppose that makes sense because the more profitable things are being in real estate for real estate agents, the more people who want to be real estate agents, which means the association makes more money. So I think from that standpoint, it made sense. And maybe that's not even their thought process. Maybe I'm making them out to be far more evil than they deserve to be made out to be. But the idea of prices going up and people getting loaned more money is very sexy for the real estate business. And I think that is why you tend to hear that be the first thing they encourage a marketplace to do rather than build more homes. Because if you get more of a supply, then you tend to see prices stabilize or go down a little bit. But I think we're now to the point where you can't even make that argument. You could keep making homes at the level we're making them now, and prices wouldn't drop at all. So we really need to boost it. We may see some stabilization in California. I think the rest of the country is going to benefit from this surge sooner than California does, but we'll see how things play out. I'm still not enthusiastic about an awful lot of areas of California in terms of investing. All the sexy areas are not sexy in terms of investing unless you're able to track down some just amazing deals. Let's see. Starts declined in both single and multifamily units. Permits beat expectations, so that's really good news. There was an 18.3% surge in multifamily units, so we're still seeing a lot of multifamily going on. However, single-family permits still beat out multifamily permits, and that hasn't always been the case. We've had quite a few times over the last few months where multifamily really dominated. In fact, we saw a huge amount of multifamily dominating from about 2009 up to about 2011. I'd like to see us getting some more single family out there, but you know what? I'll take what I can get. The multifamily permits are fine simply because those aren't apartments normally. Those are things like condominiums and townhomes, but I like the idea of getting more single family residential stuff pouring out there. We'll just need to keep an eye on our local marketplaces and see how that all pans out. From the standpoint of what the folks at CNBC had to say, economists polled by Reuters had forecast groundbreaking activity falling to a 1.25 million unit pace last month. Home building was up 9.2% compared to March of 2016. Construction in February was boosted by unseasonably warm temperatures, but temperatures dropped in March, and a storm lashed the Northeast and Midwest regions, which could have accounted for the drop last month in home building, which I tend to believe it did. Single-family home building, which accounts for the largest share of the residential housing market, fell 6.2%. Single-family starts in the Midwest declined 35%. We already talked about that. Now, what I wanted to hit was just some insights into what builders are saying, because we've got the numbers, right? We can see the numbers, we can theorize, but it's always good to hear about what builders are thinking when it comes to what is in their heads when it comes to building these properties. Now, according to this article, again from CNBC, a tightening labor market, which is generating steady wage growth, is underpinning the housing market. The sector, however, remains constrained by a dearth of properties available for sale. Builders have, however, failed to bridge the gap, citing a range of problems, including shortages of labor and land, as well as rising material prices. A survey on Monday showed home builders' confidence slipped in April from a near 12-year high in March. Still, measures of current sales and sales expectations remained at lofty levels. So now what solves this problem? We've in past shows talked about some of the costs faced by manufacturers. We've talked about a lot of different local, particularly in California, where as much as $100,000 can be added on to each and every home that gets sold by a developer completely independent of all the other stuff, all the taxes they have to pay, all the other things they have to pay for. This amount of money is just dropped right on top of it. And of course, you end up paying that. So in a way to try to get around that, try to cut costs in other ways, how do you do that and maintain a super high quality level of construction? And one interesting thing, again, kind of looking back to robotics here and how it's going to affect construction, is the modular home movement. Now, these in California are usually referred to as factory-built homes. These are not manufactured homes. These are modular homes. Manufactured homes are actually listed or designated as a different kind of home, for instance, in my MLS. A modular home is not. A modular home, for all intents and purposes, once it's done, you can't tell the difference between one of those homes and a normal stick-built home. And there's no separate designation on the MLS to designate that style of home because there's no reason to. It adheres to or exceeds all of the permit requirements. The only difference is it's built in a factory, but it's built in a factory in the same way that anything that's disassembled is built in a factory. They'll build the walls, they'll build segments, they'll do all these various things. They'll put in all the proper insulation. They'll usually have as much wiring in it as they possibly can. And then it's just a question of going to the site and assembling all these various pieces. I think this kind of technology could be one of the things that comes along and saves us. I'm just not sure that it is something that is going to get jumped onto as quickly. I've seen these homes. This is the style of construction I was planning on using when I was going to build a home. I visited an awful lot of folks who sell these, and I've looked at these homes when I've been doing stuff in my market here in California. They're beautiful homes, fantastic homes, no limitations. You can get anything you want, whether it's cathedral ceilings or anything else. You can get them customed. You can start off with a basic plan, and then they can tweak it however you like. I have never seen any limitation in what they've been able to do. And I honestly am starting to think that this could be a way for us to solve a lot of our problems relating to getting homes built at a more economical fashion for folks who need to be able to buy homes at that average price for a marketplace, or to be more affordable for folks. But again, it's going to take some willingness on the part of different government entities to kind of get the hell out of the way and let these things get done. I'm going to go ahead and include an article from, again, the folks at Zero Hedge on that robots will build your next home. Let's see here. And this is one thing. So there's the factory built part of it, and then there's the actual assembly part, which is also being looked at as a place where automation can step in. So in other words, remember one of the things we talked about, the builders were saying they don't have enough folks to fill the jobs. This is specifically aimed at that, so that you simply don't need as many people. Let's see. I want to cut to the cool part. Per Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, the residential housing space employed over 1 million people at the height of the housing bubble and now accounts for nearly 750,000 jobs. Of course, according to the article, it's just like the auto industry. Many of those jobs can be done at a fraction of the cost and with much greater precision by industrial robots. Those robots work inside a warehouse where they're immune from the negative consequences of weather and can work 365 days per year without compromising construction integrity. As Blueprints Robotics, that's one company that makes these, Jerry Smalley points out, nearly 60% of a custom home can be built inside a warehouse and shipped on a standard flatbed truck to its destination for installation. Now, blend that with other articles that we've talked about here on this show, where there are on-site robots today that can handle the construction process with a lot of metal construction. So this is typically commercial construction, where a lot of the welding and all of these other things can be done. There was a big building built in England that used this technology. It would be very interesting to see how this level of automation can be implemented on site. Again, I'm sharing this more as kind of an interesting thing to think about. I don't think this is something that is going to solve our problems in the near future, or enough for it to start to impact us in 2017, at least not on the getting it built on site side of it. But given that we can get this automation going from the factory side, I think this would be a great way to find a place to cut on costs that could be translated into lower costs for the purchaser even if the government doesn't get on board with a program of reducing the costs involved in development. So we'll see how that pans out. I'm not horribly optimistic about it, just because I don't see enough momentum really behind it. It's some great ideas without a lot of people actually doing anything with them. But I would love to see someone jump in, some developer jump in and start doing this. I think it would be a great way to leapfrog over some limitations relating to the costs involved. All right, folks. I hope that has been some good information for you to ponder, rattle it around in your brain, see what you think. So what's my outlook for construction moving forward? I don't think we need to be as concerned as these headlines tell us. I think that we will actually see continuing growth. And my gut tells me that as we see more builders experiencing success, other builders will see that and go, I want my piece of that pie, and we'll jump in and start building as well. So it really just takes a couple of companies to test the waters and prove that they can do a new development, build a ton of homes, and sell them out, usually to get that stuff going. The cycle again that we need to break is the one where the manufacturers are building homes for the higher end. And the only way to do that is going to be to reduce some of those costs that are imposed by some of the government stuff. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I think we'll still see growth. And here's the other thing. Even if it may delay it, but even if we do see construction only happening at the higher end, eventually that stuff results in cheaper homes down the road. More expensive new homes today does tend to equal less expensive homes several years from now. Remember, the folks that are moving into these homes have to come from somewhere. They're vacating something at the higher price points. That typically means they're leaving a house behind. And then, of course, they're probably going to move in 3 to 5 years if they go with the statistical average. It primes a pump that can help the market later. So that's no comfort today. It's no comfort in 2017, but it's something we can look forward to, at least potentially feeding that higher inventory number that we've told we're going to see around the year 2020. All right. Hope you all have a great finish off to your week as we head charging towards Friday. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you all next time.